Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Treadstone. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, we start off with Doug meeting up with his friend. It's like, yo, I saw you were there at that, like, what were you doing there? It's like, I was just trying to make some quick cash and stuff like that. And he's like, one of those guys you killed, that guy you might have killed might have been an undercover cop. I was like, oh, I was like, or is it going to be a thing of like someone else on the team was the undercover cop? I was like, because I was about to say that would suck, Doug, if you ended up killing an undercover cop. But it turns out his friend ends up betraying him because he's like, I can't go back to jail and everything. So the cops are there. Doug is making his escape. Pretty badass kind of chase on the motorcycle and everything. It turns out the dude that was kind of the leader of the group, he's there. And it turns out he's a cop. And then they start piecing it together. I was like, wait. You're all cops, aren't you? Or is he the only one that was a cop? Or what? I kept getting confused about that. I want to say they're all cops, that they're all dirty cops maybe. Or maybe he's just the one cop that was there. Or maybe his pal that died was also a cop too. Or whatever the case may be. No wonder the cops kind of jumped on this so quickly. So either like he's just the only undercover. Like I said, it kind of confused me. Because at first I was like, oh, well, you guys all undercover cops? You're actually... Well, it could have been just like they weren't... I was thinking they were dirty cops, but that's just because of what the dude says later on. It could have been they were just doing this operation. Like they're dirty cops that were trying to steal, weren't trying to kill the lady. Or maybe he was a dirty cop. He's a good cop that was undercover with this group that was just trying to steal from her. This was his way to kind of get close to the action. Maybe either way. The guy that shows up to talk to him blows his brains out and is like, oh, whoever this dude is that shows up, it seems like he's a commanding officer because the officer knew exactly who he was. So he must be like his lieutenant or captain or something like that. So it's like, okay, so he's someone that's connected to all of this, which I mean that not just on the small scale, but on a larger scale. And I love Doug shoots him. I'm like, I was like, oh man, Doug, you didn't kill the dude. The guy's still alive. Oh, that was on purpose. I was like, yo. I mean, to be fair, we've seen that Doug has crazy good precision. Because I'm about to say, it's like, because it's almost like that Sam shot of like, because, Sam made that dead on shot killing that dude. So I was like, oh man, I wish you had, but it's like, no, Doug did it on purpose to not kill the dude so that he could follow him. And I love that he made that little makeshift, listening device. I was like, holy shit, I guess that training or whatever it is you've gone through makes made that possible. I was like, you took like a little cheap flashlight and a cell phone and you made that happen. It's actually pretty damn impressive. I guess he's at the point where he's not questioning that anymore, because I guess in that moment it's like, I need this, so my training kicked in and I made this makeshift device. But what's interesting is it does seem like this might be what I kind of thought it was, because that lady kind of ran like she was doing some bootleg opioids or something like that. So she needed to be removed because this is about some pharmacy company coming in to try and do what she was doing, but make it legal. So, and remember, there's that dude who is like the heir to like the second largest pharmacy company. So this is a thing of like, it's all connected. Like whatever pharmacy company that was trying to take over her operation, the lady in the hotel room was kind of like, we need to make this look clean. So make it so that there's no traces, trailbacks to find out that these drugs, basically they're taking over her operation and folding into this pharmacy's operation so that I guess they can kind of like get some extra kickback or whatever off of like her illegal business. I guess is kind of what that's all. I'm sure it's not all clicking together, but the pieces are there. They're just not quite fitting in my head of like how it. I think I'm on the right trail. At least that's what they're setting that up to be. So obviously that's really interesting. And obviously the whole point is to get the slate clean, because obviously they don't know the dude that came to visit Doug, because Doug was like, yeah, I talked to him and he left, but he needs to be taken care of because they don't know for sure if he's dead or not. They're like trying to still figure that out. But Doug and Sam definitely have to be taken care of because there's loose ends in all of this. So there's that. There's a whole situation with So-yeon. Luckily, she didn't die. She found her way to a village where, hey, they patched her up and everything. And she somehow manages to find her way back home, but her son's with her mom, and her husband is being detained by the government until like he finishes whatever work it is that he's working on. Or either that's real or that's just playing another BS, because we know this is all connected to the Stiletto 6 stuff, because we see that So-yeon looks at it and goes, wait, those are those documents that my husband has. So either the whole point is to basically keep her under their thumb of like, do what we say, keep doing what I ask you to do your missions. And the fact is your husband, your family will be put together, which So-yeon's not stupid. She knows there's never going to be an end to this. There's always going to be one more mission, another thing. Her family is always going to be in danger until she, rescues them. So we see her sneaking in the back of someone's car, trying to follow them to where her husband. I was actually kind of worried because the whole thing is, it's interesting because once again, that was someone else, some other cicada was sent to kill her. So the question is like, they're like, oh, wow, you managed to come back. All right, so you're still of use to us, which is like, obviously you must have something to do with that because this is all connected to the Stiletto 6. So I guess they knew she wasn't fully under their control. So if something happens where it seems like she's defective, maybe the point was to kill her then. Because the lady didn't seem like she was going to kill So-yeon until So-yeon brought up the fact is those were her husband's files. But it makes me think maybe she just hadn't gotten to it yet. But that was just kind of the excuse to kind of accelerate the whole, oh, I'm going to kill you anyway thing. So that means they were planning on killing her anyway. Probably going to end up doing the same thing to her husband. Like probably whatever he is doing in this regard, because obviously Russia is selling the Stiletto 6 to them, but they're kind of usurping the government kind of. Because obviously like Kwon found out about the fact is that, there's some other group at play here within the North Korean government kind of doing their own thing. Like I say, probably trying to usurp things. I'm kind of looking at this as potentially that. So her husband, Dae, is probably being used as a means of kind of, I don't know whether he is legitimately being detained by making it like, hey, you're going to do this work for us and you're going to stay here till then, or whether he is just being detained and he tried to make it sound not as unpleasant by being like, oh, he's working for us until his job is finished, or not unless he does have a part to play in all of this. I would assume so because those plan, like not unless the whole plan is to actually replicate the Stiletto 6, maybe like that's what the designs were for, maybe. But then someone else got the design. So it's like, why is that? Not unless it's like, we need those designs so we can get the pieces. So they're trying to cut the Russians out of this deal or whatever, trying to make their own Stiletto 6 before the Russians can sell it to whoever they're going to sell it to. Not unless they're trying to like get their own before they end up buying Stiletto 6 as well. I'm jumping to a lot of conclusions. I'm sure I'm missing the mark in many regards, but I find that all fascinating in its own right. So that's going to be interesting to see where things kind of go on that front of things. Then on the other side of things is the whole situation with Matt and Stevens, which Ellen is looking into this thing because she is in this complicated situation because like she hasn't been in contact with Matt, but Matt is someone that she trusts. Apparently she's the one that brought him into the fold. Like there's a deep friendship there. There's a history there, which I'm really hoping we kind of dive into that history to find out, what that really is. But I thought it was kind of fascinating because we end up finding out that Steven's real name isn't even Stevens. It's most likely like Doug. Doug's identity isn't really his identity. Whoever you were in the past is gone. It's erased because you're not supposed to be that person anymore. You're supposed to be this weapon. But we find out Steven, his real name Jacob, isn't a part of the Treadstone program. He's actually a cicada agent. And the fact is they're making that distinction means like, okay, so someone else is pulling the strings here. So obviously Treadstone was shut down. So it's not Treadstone that was necessarily being revived. As we can see on this international level, it's actually cicadas, the cicada program, which begs the question, is Doug actually a cicada? Like, because obviously Treadstone was shut down because of the whole Jason Bourne movie. So maybe they're making it so that instead of the Treadstone program, we're dealing with the cicada program, which would also explain why they're, because at first I thought it was just about like, oh, setting up the cicada program because that's what eventually led to the Treadstone program. But like, obviously we're focusing so heavily on John's story, which is connected to the cicada program. So it makes you go, okay, so that might have a larger implication than I simply thought it was. Because I thought, like I said, it was just leading to like, okay, this is how Treadstone came to be because the government, the U.S. found out about the cicada program, decided to make it their own thing, which it's true, but that's its own thing. I think that's what eventually leads to the Jason Bourne movies. But I think this story is kind of connected while also doing its own thing and being something else entirely. Like it's all connected, but I feel like this is kind of going down more the cicada path than it is Treadstone path. I could be 100% wrong. Maybe the twist will end up being that Doug is part of the Treadstone program, but not everyone else is. But since everything else is leading towards cicadas, but we keep hearing Treadstone, I don't know. I don't know what to kind of make of that. Maybe, that's an angle of this we'll have to, keep watching to find out. But finding out that he's actually a cicada. And the fact is, Michael Gadsden's character kind of pushing Ellen and be like, oh, you don't know where Matt is. You don't know. Like, it's like there's something there. Because let's not forget, there's also the situation of like, obviously, because the real reason Stevens wanted to go to his daughter is because he knew it's like, if you guys could find out where she was, obviously the people who awoke me could as well. And so there were people there waiting, which ends up with them dead, including the lady. That's not the same. It looks like it could be her, but the lady who woke Doug up in the Arctic, that lady had dark red hair. This looked like it was someone else. I guess that was his handler. So she was the one that woke him up. I almost looked like it was the same person. I'm not sure, but her hair was like more blondish. So that's why I don't think it was actually her. So not unless I'm mistaken, which I totally could be. I'm kind of terrible with names and faces. So, but it looks like it was her, but I don't think it was. But if I'm wrong, please do correct me. But I just thought that was kind of, fascinating, and obviously like he doesn't actually want to go see his daughter because it's like, well, I want her to have the memory of me that she had, not who I've become. So he doesn't even want to do that. Now, Ellen's in this situation because Matt's calling her because the situation plays exactly how Steven said it would, that basically this runs deep and high. And the fact of the matter is you're going to get the call to be like, let someone higher up being like, yo, let me handle this. This is how it's going to go. Being like, because he knows there are top ranking people. That's a problem with such a large level conspiracy. You don't know who's involved. So he ends up talking to Ellen, which Ellen is like, the fact of the matter is I told you, gave you this mission to look into things, but obviously things have changed because Matt's seeing that like there's something much larger and deeper at play here. This doesn't just stop with Treadstone. There's just so much more at play here, but Ellen's not willing to listen. It's like the lady that is like, yeah, the lady that woke up Stevens, she's Treadstone, which immediately, so then my mind goes, okay. I mean, not Treadstone, that she's CIA. So then it becomes a thing of like, okay, so she woke Stevens up. But then it brings up the thing of, well, if he's Cicada, maybe that was done on purpose. But I was like, no, I don't think she was necessarily a target. She was just like, hey, she was supposed to kill him anyway, because I guess it's like he served his usefulness and he's going to bring things back. I'm sure, because, and once again, I kind of feel bad for him, and I brought this up, like Michael Gaston on occasion plays the bad guy. And in this case, it seems like that might not be too far of a stretch because he's trying to like clean things up. It's like, oh, we're going after Matt and Stevens because Matt's a road agent doing stuff not authorized and stuff like that, which Ellen's kind of caught because in between, because Matt was like, you're going to have to choose a side in this situation, and are you going to be able to look at yourself like wherever the chips lie? So I think Matt's in the right here trying to uncover this conspiracy. I think Michael Gadsden's character is trying to shut it all down, because I don't think he wants his involvement in all of this. I don't know. It seems like you could look at it at one angle of like, yeah, he's this part of the CIA and they don't want their business kind of turning into something that it shouldn't, or becoming like a public thing, because this might all true. Because the whole point was like this was supposed to be cover up for Treadstone, because this would be like, oh, that was a project that they started and now it's being used in this way. They don't want things kind of leaning back on them that way. But it might be more specific because he's literally got hands on in whatever this large scale conspiracy thing is that he's trying to cover his trail. So definitely know there are very higher up people involved in this. I just assume it was him. The reason why I felt bad is just because like, he was kind of in a similar case in Blind Spots. I was like, I was hoping you'd just be somewhat of a decent guy, but even now I was kind of like, you're going to end up being the bad guy in this case, aren't you? And it seems like he might be. That might be me just bringing my prejudice from Blind Spot into this, with his character. So ultimately we'll have to wait and see what ends up happening in that regard. So obviously Matt's in that position too, because Steven was like, they told you to kill me, didn't they? And it's like, what are you going to do? And it's like, I think for him, he's going to try to unravel all of this, figure out all the players involved, figure out who this is, because he even told Ellen, I was like, we were in this together to shut this down. And it's almost like, because I think Ellen is being manipulated in this case too, because now neither one of them knows whether to really trust the other one. It's like, well, he hasn't really given me any information. Well, she hasn't really given me any information, so it's that thing of like, I think they're both on the right side of this potentially. I think they just don't know if they can really trust each other yet, despite their history. Like I said, I'm hoping we get an opportunity to kind of dive into that history and find out what it is exactly. But hopefully, that whole situation is something we get to, dive into more going forward. And then there's the other side of things with John, which I think the situation with John is very fascinating. Obviously, we see that, basically the entirety of everything that kind of went down between him and Petra and this whole Cicada program, from him being a distraction that Frank can get away, but he didn't have any plans on getting captured because he's like, I'd rather die than go through the torture that obviously they're going to put me through. But before he could do anything like that, Petra called onto him, and she looked at him as a candidate because I guess she saw what he did. Like, oh, he's willing to let his friend go. He was willing to sacrifice himself for that. And obviously she starts putting him through the program. It's interesting when you actually kind of look at everything. I wonder how much of what went down between Petra and John was purely her being like, because it almost seems like basically the conditioning needs a little bit of an anchor. And I think she was trying to be that anchor, but it ends up turning into more. Like, it looks like there was actually a relationship there where it's like John started to care about her, but at the same time, she started caring about him. I mean, because it took a very long time to break him. Because at first, he wasn't going to be broken, but for her, that's what made him. She saw something in him as, oh, he's special. He's so strong. Even like, that was in the past of 73 in this, in that 9-month span, but currently in 73, there's the dude that was with her at the motel or whatever that was like, Yuri thinks that you're kind of compromised, that you're kind of stuck between whether you should choose between us and him, which is like, even I was kind of like, why are, I get it because like he's your pet project and everything, but it does seem like you were super invested in this. I thought it was just because, well, you've already dedicated so much time, but it's like, it seems like John's a special case because even during the training and stuff like that, she's like, oh, none of the others can beat your record. He's like, wait, what others? Who else are you training? Which is like, I guess like, I think it was a thing of like she was training multiple people, but something about John, I don't know what it was, because she had given him this whole spiel about like, you were raised to have these preconceived notions of good versus evil. Kind of the CIA kind of warped your mind into thinking that. And I guess what she's trying to say is that basically there is no good and evil. It's just, this is war. And just because everyone's, once again, the hero or villain of their own story. So like everyone's going to think they're the hero of their own story. So they'll villainize everyone else but themselves. So I think maybe that was kind of what she was leaning into. That's kind of what I took from it. But regardless, the fact is that, she tries to show them kindness, like even saying like, oh, they threw cold water on you. I told him to make it warm. She bought him some food because the doctor was originally saying like, we might as well scrap this whole thing because he's not breaking. The fact of the matter is this whole process is wasted on him, but she didn't want to give up on him for some reason, even being like, I'm sorry. And I'm like, what's up with that? Because it seemed like all of this was for the purposes of everything's, for Russia. So like, is it a thing of, was she like, I don't know. Cause like, why go through the trouble of making him a weapon if you had your doubts about like what your country represented? I mean, obviously that wasn't 100% the case because you literally spent like 20 odd years, more so 30, because she started looking after the Soleto like at 80 something. I think it was like 84, she was saying. So she's been looking after it for like 30 plus years. So I'm like, so obviously you're just as dedicated to your country. So it's like, what is your reasoning behind this? Why get so close to John? Like, is it supposed to be a twisted thing of like, he started off as a pet project, but then you actually grew attached to him? Was this always the plan where you meant to make him into a weapon, make him your personal weapon? Is that what this is supposed to be? Or is it supposed to be kind of like a thing of like your cake and eating it too? Because it's like, oh, I get him while also kind of getting a reputation for the fact is that I'm the one that was able to pull this off and make this happen. So I'll kind of get glorified for this, kind of speak legends of my name because of what I was able to accomplish with this. I don't know. And because obviously there were moments where it hasn't completely set in. Obviously that's obvious because he was able to break free at the very beginning of the season, obviously. But also even moments like that where he'd kind of break and be like, whoa, how did they know my name? I can't do this. And obviously she kind of pushes him even more so. But like whatever the Cicada program did to him, it isn't 100% set in. And obviously maybe that's why, because she's like, I'm on the cusp of making you something great. And I just got to push a little further and get you completely under my control. Maybe. And it even kind of lends itself to the thing I brought up last episode, like his name being written so much on that wall in the motel or whatever. It's because he was trying to hold on to whatever bit of his identity he could. There's also that thing of like him hearing voices and stuff like that. The moment she was like, oh, he's like, they're calling my name. It's like, oh, what are they calling? I'm like, that was the whole point. Because you kept hearing a voice saying John. So either that really was all in his head, side effects of the drugs, or they caught his name. They knew his name was John, maybe because someone else had already said his name was John. Or maybe it was a thing of she benefited from his delusion, but it sounded like someone was purposely whispering his name. And, he kind of finally broke down and everything. And he's like, it tells her his name. And it's like, all right, now we can continue the process. He's even talking about the fact is, what did you do to me? And I don't know what it is that Petra has in mind. Sadly, we see that she ends up having John yet again. It's just like, just when he thought he got away, she ends up running him over and capturing him again. So I guess she's going to finish her process, which once again, I'm curious to see what this, it might be a twisted thing that when it's all said and done, she might end up, not twisted, but an interesting thing could be that when it's all said and done, she could end up letting him go. Maybe when she looks at the gold watch and she's smiling present day, that could be because she was remembering John, like the weapon she made that she fell in love with. Like I said, I don't know what to really make of that. I'm interested to kind of dive into that find out, like, okay, what were you doing? What was this really all about, Because or maybe the reason why she has a watch now is because she meets up with him and it's there, So while she has him, maybe she doesn't let anyone back in Russia know. Maybe she only holds on to him and then he escapes. Or maybe she does let him go and John disappears. I mean, either we're going to find out that eventually the CIA or the KGB ended up killing him, or that he's actually still alive and well. I mean, hell, for all we know, he might actually be alive and well, and he might be the centerfold of all of this. That might end up being the twist. A lot of stuff running through my head about this whole situation. I'm very excited to see, where ultimately all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good